I want to welcome you all to Karuna Connectors. I'm Polly Byers, and I'm the Executive Director of the Karuna Center for Peacebuilding, which has been working to build resilience in countries affected by violence since its founding in 1994 and worked in over 40 countries since then. For those of you who have not attended one of these events before, in brief, Karuna Connectors is simply an opportunity for interested people like yourselves to hear directly from our partners and practitioners about the work, and also to expand our network of partners and supporters. And today we are extremely lucky to have three amazing people who are leading our work in Nigeria, to give a firsthand perspective on the work and insight into the project, which is called Protecting Our Communities Initiative, which they lead and manage on the ground with our incredible partner, the Neem Foundation. Before introducing them, I just want to say a few words of background and general context. I think most of us are well aware of the enormous impact that climate change is having across the globe, and certainly in Africa, being particularly hard hit, causing significant displacement, increasing pressure on scarce resources, and generally serving as a compounding factor to many of the underlying challenges, including ethnic and religious tensions and other social and political and economic challenges. And Nigeria, as the most populous country in the African continent, faces a wide range of climate-exacerbated conflicts, including a current insurgency in the northeast and northwest, militant groups in different areas in the south, and looming secessionist movements across the southeast and southwest. In addition, the country has seen a significant increase in the rate of the long-standing farmer-herder conflicts, as well as kidnappings and ethno-religious tensions. And to address these multifaceted challenges, there are a wide range of efforts, including this project, which you're about to hear about firsthand. However, the final point I'd like to make is that our goal, and where we're really seeing real results, is focusing on these deeper, as Karuna's work generally has been, focusing on the deeper ethnic and religious divisions that are at the root of so many of these conflicts by building resilience more broadly to the conflict of the communities in which we're working. So with that, I'm going to briefly introduce our speakers, starting with Seth Karamage, who will facilitate the discussion. And is a Karuna Center board member, we are thrilled about. And he is the lead consultant and dialogue coach for Karuna in this project, Protecting Our Communities, where he's been supporting community members to set up their own ongoing dialogue systems. Born and raised in Rwanda, Seth completed his graduate studies in coexistence and conflict at Brandeis, focused on conflict resolution, mediation, strategic organizational leadership, and diversity work. And prior to this project, he spent 6 years in Nigeria planning and coordinating projects designed to promote interreligious coexistence and peace building. And recently he was also, Seth was our dialogue coach in Karuna's Healing Our Communities project in Rwanda. Next is Ahmad Jumare, who's a program manager and strategic communications lead at our partner, the Neem Foundation, and he manages the overall implementation of the project in its 18 different communities throughout rural Nigeria. He brings a very impressive and diverse expertise in the areas of security, strategic communications, project management, and in countering violent extremism, which he brings to the project. He was a pioneer staff member, in fact, of the Nigerian government's Countering Violent Extremism program at the Office of the National Security Advisor, where he was involved in setting up Nigeria's first soft approach to countering violent extremism. And he's represented Nigeria in several high-level security and social development meetings around the world. And then finally, Imam Mohammed Sani Isah, whom I hope we have on the line, we're having a little bit of technical difficulties before, dedicates his work to interreligious coexistence and the mitigation of violence. And he has served as the religious leader liaison in this program for the past 2 years. And in that role, he works closely with a wide range of community members to share skills and dialogue and promote mutual understanding. He is a well-respected Islamic scholar and widely consulted by religious leaders, scholars, and faith communities, and holds many positions, including serving as the director of intervention at the Interfaith Mediation Center in the state of Kaduna, Nigeria, He's special assistant to the Kaduna State Governor on Hajj and Islamic matters. He's co-facilitator of the Kaduna Peace and Reconciliation Committee. And finally, but not least, he is the chief imam of the Waf Road Muhammadu Budari Way Mosque Forum. And with that, it was hard to keep it condensed. I'm going to turn it over to Seth, who is going to facilitate the discussion.
Well, thank you very much, Polly, for such a wonderful introduction of ourselves. And it is an honor to see so many of my friends, our friends in the peace building work here. Most of them I know, and those that I'm meeting for the first time, I am pleased and honored to meet with you and have this wonderful conversation with you. So yes, like Polly said, I'm Rwandan, but I have also worked in Nigeria for a couple of years. So it's always a pleasure talking about Nigerian peace building work, which I'm very proud of doing. So yes, and I don't know if Imam Sani is on. If Imam Sani you are on, please let us know, because I can't see your name, but just say a word so that I can know that you are there, so that I can also talk more about you and Ahmad as my colleagues, whom we are going to be, talking to our friends here. Is Imam Sani there?
It looks like he's here. I see his name, but I just asked him to unmute, but I don't know if he's having technical project problems.
Okay, please, Imam Sani, when you get over that internet issue, if you're hearing us, please just raise your hand so that we can see that you are there. But let me just try to explain a little bit about also the structure of this project we are implementing in Nigeria with the Karuna Center and Neem Foundation as our partner. It is a project, like Polly said, that is aiming at promoting and strengthening the resilience of communities, meaning that we want to see a society that is more resilient to any conflict indicators or to any spark of violence. The reason why we did design this project like that is because of what we had noticed from Nigeria and also in neighboring countries, including my own country, Rwanda, where we see that people can easily, fight and kill each other just because of one false information or because of an ideology that people have been inculcated in through different decades. This is what we have also been noticing in Nigeria. And we thought that it would be good to design a project that would really help citizens of the country, with at least focusing on a few states where we could actually help grassroots people become more resilient, because we believe that people can actually come up with their own homegrown solutions. And this is what we are doing. We are focusing on different issues, but mostly on promoting the youth and women's resilience to raise up their voices, to make sure that they relate with the government officials and the civil society organizations to call for any intervention that would help them really to become more resilient or to become more collaborative, because we want to see them critically thinking together, critically collaborating, and critically dialoguing for a homegrown solution. And that's what we have seen really happening. And with this, we have employed a structure that has at least 4 components or pillars on which this project is built, of which you will see some good impact that has come out of this approach, as Ahmed will tell you. So some of these pillars or components include the early warning component. The early warning component is a structure or a system we have put in place, not just the usual information gathering structure, but helping grassroots people understand what threatens their own livelihood or their own living, and work together on suggesting what could be the best solution to addressing whatever they see as a threat to their living. And the way this is done is by actually gathering this information openly, authenticate it, and then disseminate it for intervention, whether quick, for a long term or short term. And they bring this into a dialogue structure that we have also put in place, where we have trained community dialogue facilitators, whom we call CDFs. We have trained them, we have given them the capacity to gather this information and sit with the traditional leaders, religious leaders, as the society is established, and they tell them that this is what we are gathering. How can we address this? Then they decide on who they should call for intervention, or they actually mutually sit with their different religions, values, economic differences, and then they decide on how they can address that. We will see that. That is through the dialogue. And we also have a psychosocial support, where we also look and talk to those who have been affected by the violence or who have been threatened by the past. And then they actually get helped by the trauma healing companions, who are actually very close to them, whom we have trained at the grassroots level. And they also get referred to some health centers that are existing in those communities we are operating from. And sometimes they also get connected to high-level hospitals where they need that kind of help. Seeing Imam Sani now, he's just on, but let me just finish introducing or explaining about the structure. And the last structure that we also embark on for consolidating all this information is the media structure, where we focus mostly on social media messaging and radio shows. And you might wonder who is participating on these radio shows. These are the stakeholders who have proved to be well-wishers or peace builders from the grassroots level. We bring them to the radio shows, and they get to speak about their transformation, where they have come from, what impact they have seen from their communities. Neither Neem nor Karuna just goes to the media. It is them. We give them the capacity. They come and start talking about what they have actually done by themselves. And with this, we see how they get connected with non-implementing communities, non-implementing states, and they get to be heard by government officials, and they see what they can do by themselves. So last but not least is the advocacy. The advocacy component of this structure that we are actually implementing, it starts before the implementation of the project, and it also comes during and at the end of the project, because whatever we learn, we have actually given the capacity to our stakeholders, right from the state to the grassroots level, the capacity to advocate for what they have learned and adapted. So we are really helping them to have that culture of learning, monitoring, and adaptation. So all that is what we are trying to put into this structure for protecting our communities project. Imam Sani, you are here, and you have already been introduced by Polly, and I was talking about how you have also been incredible in helping us. You were part of designing this project, protecting our communities project, right from the beginning, as we were writing. And you are a senior citizen of Nigeria. You are a religious leader. You are somebody who has been promoting coexistence and tolerance among Nigerians and across Nigerians, actually, promoting people to accept different values, different understandings. Can you please tell us a little bit about why this project, speaking from the Nigerian perspective, why was it designed the way I have been explaining? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Seth, and good evening to everyone. Am I with you?
Yes, Ma'am Sani, you may actually take off your video if that would give you a better bandwidth so that we can hear you very well.
Yeah, what of now? Can you hear well now? Can
Yes.
you hear very well now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much for Polly Bias for her own good gesture. Let me tell you, sincerely speaking, protecting our community initiatives that is tactically introduced in Nigeria, selecting areas of the north that are very much, you know, I don't want to say volatile, but let me say volatile. You know, we have Zamfara State, we have Kaduna State, and we have Benue State. Kaduna State and Benue State are from the north central, while Zamfara State is in the northwest. So if you want to do a pilot project to test how you can help us and how you can promote or to create and promote a resilient community members in Nigeria, you need to take these 3 states first: Zamfara, Kaduna, and Benue. And the reason why I say this is because in Zamfara State, banditry and kidnapping and farmer herders clashes are there. In Kaduna State, banditry, farmer herders clashes, and religious intolerance is there. When you go to Benue State, which is considered as the middle belt of the north, it's also having all the 3: farmer herders clashes, religious intolerance, and other forms of intolerance. So, sincerely speaking, we are suffering in Nigeria long time ago, suffering in Nigeria from this religious intolerance, ethnic intolerance, north-south dichotomy troubles. So we are north, they are south, we and them. All these are what is contributing to conflict between us as Nigerians, especially in northern Nigeria. So taking these components to address our issues was very decisive and very wise. And if you come and see how results are coming so prominent these days, considered when Mr. Seth was here in Nigeria. When Seth was here with us some years back, and I remember we were with him in the state to show you how volatile this our area and how intolerant our area is. Being said that he dressed in a Western dress, looking like somebody from America or from France or Germany or United Kingdom. He entered a class with some Christian boys who are between 12 and 15 years old, trying to talk to them then he was there alone. When I come in my traditional dress, and when they see me, they know that this is a Muslim. And when they see Seth Karamage, they assume that he must be a Christian. From his dress and from his way of talking to them, he looks like a Christian, then they fell at home with him. But as soon as I came into the class, the children were jumping through the window, some of them through the door, running away from me because they saw a Muslim who to them is first of all Hausa Fulani, secondly a Muslim, thirdly a killer, and fourthly somebody who hates them, somebody who doesn't love them. They ran out because this is what they learn from their parents, this is what they see from their parents. And if this happened, this one is around 2014. So if this happened also in an area which is Muslim dominated, and I was in the class, and Mr. Seth came in with his dress like that, sincerely speaking, the Muslim will run out from the window because they saw a killer, somebody who hates them, somebody who hates Hausa Fulani, somebody who hates the Muslim, somebody who is antagonistic to the Muslims. This is how we live. So it is very wonderful to find that if you come and look at how this work we are doing is changing us from where we used to be to where we are today, you say that yes, we decisively decided, we selected this topic or this components very decisively to address our issues. So I want to say that we need help. We need help from the experts. We need help from the Western communities. We need help from the Eastern communities. We need help from the international community to come and guide us on how to coexist peacefully. Give us the tools, give us the wisdom through the dialogue. We have an RSD, which is helping us here, reflective structured dialogue. So we need these tools. We need to be guided. Also, we need the early warning, early response component, which is with us right now. We need to be on the radio and television so that people will see and hear us Muslim and Christian talking together, Muslim and non-Muslim, Fulanis and non-Fulanis, Hausas are talking together to each other, trying to understand each other, not as we used to do, because earlier on, we just talk in order to outshine the other, to look down on the other, to show that we are the best and they are the worst. That is what we do. But with these programs now, you can see how they are changing us from what we used to be to another positive and productive and developmental community. Maybe I can stop here before I can give given another chance to talk again.
Thank you very much, Imam Sani. Yes, you even have more time and you can explain further. And before I call upon my colleague Ahmad, let me just also talk a little bit about what Imam Sani was referring to. And Imam Sani, thank you very much for reminding me about that incident. It was quite shocking to me, because those kids, they flew out of the windows and they were jumping, some fell down, and it was really very traumatic to me. All I did to calm the situation down, I turned to Imam Sani and I hugged him, because they looked at me and they thought maybe their cousin, their brother, their what, but they never thought that I could hug a Muslim who looks like a Muslim. And I turned to Imam Sani, I held him, instead of chasing them and running away, I held him and I hugged him. I said, look, he's a good guy, he's a friend of mine. We work together, we do this and that. And then the kids started peeping through the window, looking at us. But when I saw this, that drew me back to my own country's experience. A country that has been experiencing, or a country that has been inculcated with an ideology of divisionism, seeing a society that is so much divided along economic and social lines. In Rwanda before 1994, of which we are trying now to address from today, we were very much aware and told that, yes, you are a Tutsi, you are a Hutu, and these, they do farming, these do herding, or they do cattle rearing. That is the same thing that we were experiencing, just like some of the Nigerian citizens are facing. And one leader would just come and say, look, this is an intruder. The concept of intrusion, the ideology of intrusion, who is a citizen and who is an intruder? Even today, we are seeing it in some of the communities we are working with. When we gather stakeholders, they are battling with a policy, with a law that will help citizens to know who is the indigene and who is not an indigene of this particular place. So with this, through a dialogue that is structured right from the community level to the state level, to the national level where we have recently gotten to, is trying to work together with all these stakeholders to make sure that they at least embrace the culture of coexistence and collaboration, dialoguing on policies, on strategies of actually helping citizens live together and carry out some good sensitization. All this is happening. Ahmed, I don't want to talk about the impact of what we have seen with this approach of protecting our communities project. You have been, at the forefront of managing the project, going to the field, managing our field staff, and working on a learning and adaptation. What have you seen that you can share with our audience here? Thank you, Ahmed.
Thank you very much, Seth. And just to confirm, can you hear me clearly?
Very well.
Thank you. And I have to say that was an amazing introduction, Polly. It's always refreshing to have a chance to connect with, especially a global audience that shares at least or the same passion in terms of addressing these issues of conflict. Firstly, before I go into it, I would definitely say that every single success I'm about to mention right now was not achieved without the effort that has been put in by the amazing team that we're working on the field. These are the district liaison officers, the community liaison officers, the multimedia officers, as well as also the psychological and counseling officers that we work in. Also, just to add to this as well, across the 3 states, we have very key CBO partners that have been very instrumental in helping us achieve some of these successes. Hope for the Village Child Foundation in Kaduna. We have Elohim Development Foundation in Benue, and then Voluntary Aid Initiative in Zamfara. So quickly to move into this, you know, the most interesting thing about peace building is sometimes I think there was a story that was told just yesterday. Someone was making the equivalent to having, you know, 3-year-olds from different backgrounds and racial backgrounds and religious backgrounds play in a playground. What you find is oftentimes they don't really see the differences. They don't see the color, they don't see religion. So at some point you start to wonder, how were they able to learn how to hate? And if it's something that humans can learn, then I can tell you for a fact it's something that can be learned. So that's one of the beauties of the Protecting Our Communities initiative. Just to give an example, some of the interesting things we've seen over the past 3 years or so, and we have some of the team members on this call as well, was the beauty of actually breaking the barriers in terms of stereotypes. For example, when we went into a state like Zamfara, some of the gaps we found was that there was limited female participation, not just in elements of contribution to peace building, but even in aspects of contribution, lending their voice to the process of peace building itself. As you know, for those of you that look at some of the research, you see that Nigeria actually, I think, out of the 100% of radio listeners in Nigeria, there were recent figures that came out that about 60 to 70% of those listeners are actually male. So it means that there was a disconnect between actually sharing female voices and actually getting women to also participate in understanding what's going on across the society. So that's one of the achievements we found in Zamfara. Truly, the program, through the support of the team and the CBOs, were able to encourage more women to participate in the radio programs. There were call-in segments that deliberately encouraged discussions around issues of female participation in peace building. And these are some of the really, positive stories we're seeing out of states such as Zamfara. We've seen really incredible strides in states such as Kaduna. For context, Kaduna State is a state that has been, since the 1980s, has had significant issues of ethno-religious violence, coupled with also in the 90s, the emergence of a wider conflict within the farmer-hada context. So the state was able to set up a peace commission. Several engagements through the state level led to the peace commission actually being interested in working closely with the program in itself. In fact, some of the things we're seeing is the state have now actually requested that we participate in the processes of the peace commission, even to the point of requesting that we have a presence in some way within that peace commission to contribute to the early warning and early response operations. Beyond that, of course, we have some stories that the program is more popularly known for, but of course there are other strides. For instance, in Benue, where you had a group called the MACBAN, which is the umbrella body. It's called the Miet Allah Cattle Breeders Association, which is the umbrella body of the Herders Association in Benue. as well as AFAN, which is the All Farmers Association, which is the umbrella body of the farmers operating within that state. Really, it was an arduous effort that was put in by the team, everyone involved in the project, to ensure that these two sides to sit down on one table to have discussions. It started with a dialogue within the group itself, which is the intra-dialogue, where issues surrounding what acceptance of peace would look like for them was discussed. Agreement was reached that they would participate in a wider discussion. A similar discussion was held with the All Farmers Association. And today, after a series of dialogue discussions where both groups were involved, I can tell you for a fact that they have now decided to see themselves as one entity. In fact, a popular statement that we all love to always quote on the project is the statement made by the AFAN chairman. You know, interestingly, we had them come to Abuja, meet with an organization which I'll talk about shortly. And we thought they would present as two separate entities. But to our shock, when the group stood up, they said, we have appointed one person to speak on our behalf. We are not herders, we are not farmers. All of us are farmers. They are livestock farmers and they are crop farmers. We are one, we are all farmers. And this was such a powerful message that was sent across. Surprisingly, because one of the first meetings we had, I remember being in a high-level meeting and someone standing up and saying, you know, in the past, I used to think these herders were demons hiding in the forest, but now we can see them face to face. So there are so many ways we can break barriers. All you need to do is to talk. I mean, if you look at conflicts globally, you find that no matter how long they extend, eventually these conflicts end up being mediated on a table, discussions with parties involved. To also strengthen some of our efforts, some of the things that we've really been able to tie in is how we can further involve government at the federal level. Of course, with the great leadership of Karuna, Seth, Paulie, and the rest of the team, we were able to connect with an organization of government called the Institute for Peace and Conflict Resolution, the foremost institute in the country responsible for mediating issues of conflict, peace, and also advising government on mechanisms that they can put in place to address these challenges. Of course, the discussions happened across several months. And most recently, it led to the rollout of a national conference on farmer-herder relations. This conference was quite remarkable in the sense that it gave us an opportunity to really practice what we preach, you know, bottom-top approach to addressing issues of conflict. We had voices of people that were involved directly in issues of conflict. We had voices of people that were involved directly in addressing elements of government policy. We had voices of civil society organizations that were present, as well as also every single security organization that was involved or that is involved in the peace process. Some of the hopes we have for this engagement at a national level is that we will one day be able to actually speak out and say that we didn't just stop at talking to communities. Like I said, we practiced what we preached. We went to the government. We didn't just speak on behalf of these people, but we had the people speak on behalf of themselves with the presence of government and those responsible for addressing the conflict. In fact, some of the real beauty that we found of having people sit down and connect was that instantly we saw a gap. And that gap is that a lot of the agencies involved, a lot of the parties involved in the conflict are not talking. In fact, after a week after the conference, almost 90% of the requests we were getting from participants of the conference is, please, can you introduce me to this person? Can you introduce me to this person? So everyone wanted to be linked. And I think this also speaks to some of the philosophy that even at Neem that we've learned about how Karuna Center for Peacebuilding has really been able to connect people. Sometimes it's not about having these isolated discussions to mediate. It's actually just about having the right people sit together on the right table, and you can address a lot of challenges. And these are some of the things we were able to achieve, and we're still learning. It doesn't come without its own challenges. There were moments where I can tell you for a fact I've had a near heart attack thinking about our team members when, in fact, sometimes you even feel so emotional talking about these things that it's hard to speak about them. When you think about the team members that are having to go constantly on a daily basis to communities to hold these discussions, it's incredible to see the passion involved across the program. We've seen kidnappings happen. We've had representatives of our security committees kidnapped. We've had staff members that were almost harmed as a result of the activities, as well as also most recently, we've seen some of the incredible challenges as it relates to the economy, which of course now is global with the rise of COVID and the conflict in Russia. But notwithstanding all these challenges, we see these communities that we operate in, the CBOs, our partners, the staff, continuously wanting to engage in peace. And for one simple reason, sometimes you can see conflict in your home or your neighbor's house, and you think that conflict is distant, but it only takes a small time for that conflict to also affect you. And that is what we've seen in Nigeria. And this is why we hope that, of course, this model can not just be adopted by other entities, but also be refined. We are a program that wants to learn. If we see examples of systems that can improve what we're currently doing, it's something that we always hope to continuously adapt to engaging with. Thank you very much. Seth, I think I'll pass it back to you before we move on. Thank you very much.
I can't thank you enough, Ahmed. Thank you very much. And we hope our audience too will have something to say after your wonderful and incredible presentation from both you and Imam Sani. As Ahmed was talking, he just reminded me about an ongoing campaign here in Rwanda for strengthening the reconciliation that we are actually enjoying. There is a campaign that says, I will just mention it in my own language, the Kinyarwanda. This campaign says that Ndu Munyarwanda. Ndu Munyarwanda means, you can even Google it and see it, it means I'm a Rwandan. We don't want to see ourselves as either a Hutu or a Tutsi, or a cattle farmer or a crop farmer. We went through all this. You know, when I see my friends from Nigeria going through all this, I sit like a grandfather who is seeing, you know, grandchildren fighting over some toys. And remember that he also was once in that kind of battle. You know, when the AFAN chairman, the All Nigerian Farmers Association chairman from Benue State, made that statement, it struck my thinking, and I felt like, oh my God, this gentleman has actually hit the nail on the right part, where he's saying, I don't want to be seen as a crop farmer or a cattle farmer, but I want to be proud of being a farmer for Nigerians, because we all feed on crops and, you know, beef or meat, whatever way it should be called. And I felt like, yes, this is the genesis of seeing ourselves as one society, not looking at ourselves from, you know, an economic spectrum. I felt like, yes, this is the right campaign that has actually been, you know, generated or has been delivered or born from our dialogue systems that we have put in place. And we are so grateful to see that this gentleman put this, to the national level. And it's something that is now being appreciated, seeing how much, state governments are appreciating all this. And feel like, yes, we are connecting the gaps, like Ahmed is saying. So let me allow some people also to ask some questions or make some comments with the remaining few minutes. But I really appreciate you all. Thank you. And Laura, please, you can help us, if I miss any questions, you can also read them for us so that we can respond and know who it is being addressed to.
Seth, I'll just mention one, and thank you, Jared and Laura Leray, who have asked questions. So please, I've neglected to say this at the beginning, but put in the chat. You can either raise your hand or type in questions. And obviously, Ahmad, Imam, Sani as well, chiming in. But Jared Miller has asked, who's apparently used to work on farmer-herder dialogues in the plateau, asking specifically about the involvement of government stakeholders. And I think it would be helpful to hear more about at the community level, at the local level. And Ahmed, you spoke about the big meeting when IPCR at the national government level, but I think hearing a little bit more about that, about how you've been collaborating at that local level, and then the outcome of where, I know it's in process of the big meeting last month in Abuja, but I think that would be helpful. So maybe you can try that, and Seth, you can take it from there.
Yeah. Well, Ahmed, if you want, you can go first, and I can also respond to that, because you have all been on the field. And
yes. Thank you very much, Paulie. I think if I get your question right, the question specifically is in involvement of government.
Yes, as both of them. This was, yes, a question from Jared Miller about at the involvement that you've seen I'm specifying that at the community level, but also how have the continued dialogues changed, how officials interact or collaborate with community leaders. And I think also speaking about it at the national level as well was the question.
Perfect. So I think I'll break it down into 3 segments. So we do have relationships with key frontline government agencies. Primarily, I think we have about 7 to 8 key agencies that are involved besides the agencies in the state. But starting from the local government level, we have something called the early warning and early response committees. Within those committees, we don't just have the religious and traditional leaders, women leaders, youth leaders, but we have representation of agencies such as the National Security and Civil Defense Corps, some cases the Department of State Security, the police force, and in some cases we even have other arms of government that are willing to participate, primarily governments involved, agencies of government involved in the response aspect of security. But one beauty of the work that we've done is not restricted, in the sense that what we've been able to do at the state level is also connect directly with the state governments, but also build relationships with other relevant institutions. So not all the states, for instance, and Jared, anyone that has worked in Plateau State, trust me, does know quite a bit about some of these conflicts. So, for instance, Plateau does have a peace commission. Similar to Karuna, that has a peace commission. We have partnered with them. They've been involved in all, if not almost all of the meetings we've had at the state level. They've also contributed immensely, in most cases, to the way we respond to issues. In places like Zamfara, for instance, we've had involvement of the State Ministry for Information, Internal Security Affairs Commission in the state, as well as various other state government organs. Most recently, actually, in Benue, one of the interesting linkages we've made is with the State Ministry for Agriculture. As you know, a lot of the management of livestock, especially as it relates to the operation of the herders in the state, is coordinated through not just the livestock agency, but also with involvement of the State Ministry for Agriculture. But beyond that, what we found is that, and which is why we've, of course, constantly found ourselves having to expand this network of government agencies responsible. And of course, we have about 40 to 50 government representatives in the program as a whole. But what we've seen is, and you know, sometimes it's always good to be as frank as possible, even when having discussions and successes. And there were gaps in terms of response. So in the initial stages of the program, what we found, and this is not just isolated, of course, to this POC program, but generally is either the response time by government agencies or their ability to coordinate the responses effectively. So what we've done to resolve some of these issues is to look at it from this perspective. So responses have to actually be localized in a lot of cases. For instance, if I just give you an example, in Karuna, for instance, you may find that when there's conflict, responses could be more effective being channeled through, for instance, the DSS or the police, or in some cases, even the traditional institutions. In Zamfara, you could find a different case, and you could find a different case. So I think, you know, even in terms of the philosophy of the project, we found that it's important to actually not restrict the way you see government participation from the lens of what traditionally has been done. And that's why each state that you find, where you find similar committees, but the responses oftentimes are unique, and the format in which we process these responses are also unique. I'll give you an example, and not to go off on a tangent, but for instance, some of the challenges we found that are unique to states. For instance, in Zamfara, in the early days, we realized that a lot of the communities were not able to actually send in responses via messaging or through the app. Obviously, because we do realize the internet penetration in Zamfara is low, levels of literacy may not be as significant as other states. And so we introduced a segment that could allow you to call into the system. And with that, we found that a lot of people were then more active in participating in terms of transmitting information and early warning signs of conflict. At the federal level, we've also had some really good strides. For instance, the example I just gave with the Institute for Peace and Conflict Resolution is just one of many that we've started really cementing in terms of how to address these challenges. But also we've started to see that oftentimes you don't just stop at conference or a workshop or a high-level meeting. What you do is put specific deliverables in place. So one of the things that we're doing is we're working with the Institute for Peace and Conflict Resolution to create a roadmap for addressing farmer herder or enhancing farmer herder relations in Nigeria. One of the things that we hope the roadmap will achieve is guiding the signing of the National Peace Plan